Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I trust you had a great weekend and I wish you the best for this week. I thank Al Jazeera, Sami Zaidan for the invitation to participate on Inside Story, what's behind the South African finance minister's sacking. And there are some great guests, Bongani, Lawson Naidu and myself. And I became quite feisty at one point, I must say. I took exception at a couple of things that Bongani was accusing me of. And I thank Indefatigable for this photograph of my good self on Inside Story. My piece over the weekend continues from that theme, and it's called Go Limit Short South Africa. Who can forget that moment when Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and just about everyone in the world was watching? The Rainbow Nation was born. We all knew at that moment, even President de Klerk, that we were watching the first president of a free South Africa and not a long-term prisoner blinking in the harsh sunlight. South Africa is the biggest economy in sub-Saharan Africa. It lost the lead briefly to Nigeria, but has regained top dog status. It might be very fine right now, actually. The rand is the 9th most traded currency worldwide, and therefore South Africa is not a tucked away African country, but the big cheese. Events in South Africa unfold on the world stage. Investors who might find buying T-bills in Harare a stretch will quite happily trade the rand, buy a share or two at the JSE. South Africa is on the radar of global investors in a way other sub-Saharan African countries can only dream about. President Jacob Zuma, by recalling his finance minister Pravin Gordhan from an international roadshow, was sending a message about who is the top dog. From the moment of the recall through his summary dismissal alongside his deputy and 8 other cabinet members, South African assets have gotten hammered. The South African Communist Party said in an email statement on Friday, once more it lays bare a disturbing reality. Increasingly our country is being ruled not from the union buildings, but from the Gupta family compound. The ANC sits at a crossroads. Julius Malema, the articulate firebrand leader of the EFF, said to Power FM, "When I was sitting there looking at old veterans, I realized that the real ANC is outside the ANC with no role to play. For now it seems the ANC has been personalized in the court of King Zuma, and folks are more concerned about their own positions being liquidated rather than the party's position. I will turn to the market reaction, which was violent momentarily. President Zuma accused Gordhan and his deputy, Jonas, of setting up secret meetings to start what was called Operation Checkmate to undermine Zuma. Zuma, laid the charge that Gordhan was working in cahoots with white monopoly capital. President Zuma struck in the dead of night when most folks are tucked up in bed. In the space of 15 months, President Zuma has now fired 2 very competent finance ministers. Competency is clearly not one of the terms of reference. This kamikaze treasury midnight smash and grab is what it is. And if you ever want an example of political risk, this is as near a perfect example you're going to find. It is clear also that Gordhan and Jonas were doing some highly effective blocking and tackling at the Treasury, nuclear energy, state parastatals, the Guptas. I was at a Financial Times Africa conference last year at Claridge's, And the FT's Lionel Barber asked Pravin Gordhan, when you communicate with the South African president about the implications of a downgrade, does he understand? South Africa's GDP has been in the slow lane, around or close to a 1% GDP expansion rate. The currency was the second best performing currency in 2017 after the Mexico peso. The Indian Ocean dipole had distributed much better rains down south. When agriculture does well in Africa, the economy tends to see better diffusion. There were some green shoots. And I suspect that was the story that Gordhan was telling international investors. All of that was before the night of the long knives. The rand crashed 7.5% last week and had its worst week for more than a year. I expect it to fall further. Charlie Robertson of Renaissance Capital tweeted, each 1% fall in the ZAR shrinks South Africa's GDP by about $3 billion. Perhaps this is the economic transformation Zuma is seeking. I expect a downgrading to junk status 2-notch downgrade in very short order. The downgrade will accentuate the negative feedback loop as investors hit the eject button. A ratings downgrade will affect big government parastatals like Eskom. The new finance minister said the principle stands that it will be implemented at a pace and scale that the country can afford. I don't think we will or should try to be reckless about it. Reckless is the word. In that sense, I think sell everything and go limit short, because this is not going to play out quickly, is it? Macro thoughts best spot FX returns in 2016. You can see the pesos right up there. The dollar share of global currency reserves rose to 64%. In the end, the VIX is down, set for its lowest quarterly average since 2006. This is this extraordinary fact that the Dow Jones has rallied so sharply and volatility has been so suppressed. Home thoughts. I like this from self-enlightened hippie. Keep going, keep growing, you're doing just fine. I love this photo from Alexander Rodchenko diving. I could never dive like that. I wish I could. Of tropical mornings and rooftop pools in Laikipia County. This photo is by I Am the Ovo. Laikipia, of course, has got several challenges right now. Dawn at 16,000 feet atop Mount Kenya. Photo by Huzaifa Gaganiji. And then Desderamona tweeted a link to T.S. Eliot. Reading April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, which was the poem I used the previous week. I watched a short story, a movie by Satyajit Ray called 2. My kids will never watch these movies with me. They say they are way too slow. If you've got 15 minutes, take a look. In 1964, renowned filmmaker Satyajit Ray was asked to create a short film for Esso World Theatre, a cultural showcase presented on television and funded by the American oil company Esso. Asked to write and direct the film in English, Ray opted instead to make a film without words. The result is a poignant fable of friendship and rivalry. Jeet Thail tweeted, a perplexed moon dangles from threads of dust. I said, this is the way home? He said, no, you can't pass. The Saatchi Gallery tweeted Dan Flavin untitled to Barry, Mike, Chuck and Leonard. Political reflections. Yes, I'm calling for mass mobilization against this cabinet reshuffle, says Gordhan. And clearly, in a Sun Tzu way, Gordhan is going to represent the biggest threat to President Zuma yet. Britain's navy is far weaker than it was during the Falklands, but still cripples Spain. This is some fruity language over the weekend about how Britain would be prepared to defend Gibraltar, of course. Lots of people will remember that the Falklands War turned around Mrs. Thatcher's fortunes very, very dramatically. Trump ready to tackle North Korea alone, he tells the FT. China has great influence over North Korea, and China will either decide to help us with North Korea or they won't, Mr. Trump said in the Oval Office. If they do, that will be very good for China. And if they don't, it won't be good for anyone. He made clear that he would deal with North Korea with or without China's help, asked if he would consider a grand bargain where China pressures Pyongyang in exchange for a guarantee that the US would later remove troops from the Korean peninsula. Mr. Trump said, well, if China is not going to solve North Korea, we will. That is all I'm telling you. Very interesting piece in the FT as well. The other piece was in the FT, Destined for War, China, America, and the Thucydides trap. This was a reference in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, where Xi Jinping said we must all work together to avoid that very trap. The phrase, a reference to the ancient Greek historian's observations about the war between Sparta and Athens in the 5th century BC, was coined by Allison to describe the danger of a period in which an established great power is challenged by a rising power. Allison, the author of a classic study of the Cuban Missile Crisis, calculates that in 12 out of 16 such cases, the rivalry has ended in open conflict. This time, he argues, may be no different. China and the United States are currently on a collision course for war, unless both parties take difficult and painful actions to avert it. And I've written about this severally. And one point is, I meet a lot of people who say that the Chinese are advancing at a terrific speed. Well, if that's the case, then if you were the Americans, we'd look to push them back now rather than later. Chinese-backed infrastructure development creates a modern tribute system with all roads literally leading to Beijing. The image I have in my mind of the White House is a runaway train. Jeremy Bash, Chief of Staff of the CIA and the Department of Defense under former President Obama. The brakes are out. This is how much trouble we're in. It's a beta White House. This is in the New Yorker. Mike Allen, Axios' editor-in-chief, reported one of the officials in the meeting. He got unprecedented access to a number of meetings at the White House. Views the Trump White House in terms that could be applied to the iterative process of designing software. It's a beta White House. The senior officials at the White House was operating on similar principles to the Trump campaign. We wrote something until it didn't work anymore, the officials said. We recognized it didn't work, we changed it, we adjusted it, and then we kind of got better. This was much more entrepreneurial. We're going to keep adjusting until we get it right. Graydon Carter of Vanity Fair, who's no friend of Trump's, says he is the most ridiculed man on the planet. Trump may be a joke, but the chaos and destructive forces around him are not. If we can cause this much havoc during his first few months in office, imagine what the country and the world would look like at the end of 4 years. Watch him when he walks into a crowd of people. There is a slight grimace, a tightening of the mouth that to me indicates a hesitation, perhaps based on fear. Watch that point he's making, it's very true. He kind of doesn't walk properly. The thing is, if Trump has made any sort of arrangements with the Russians, Kremlin, oligarchs, FSB, mob, or any combination of the four, to drop the Obama-era sanctions in return for past favors, the hoo-ha surrounding his Russian connections now makes that almost impossible to deliver. Whatever support is received from the Russians over the years presumably came with promises of a payback. If Trump can't follow through on this, he might be in serious trouble. And interesting piece in Counter Punch saying false flag dog wag warning. and saying a nation's ubiquitous elite-generated paranoia-inducing message of fear about terrorism helps explain why Trump's candidacy took off like a moon rocket in November and December of 2015, the period of the terrorist attack in Paris and murders in San Bernardino. And my piece, of course, was called "We Have a Deviate Tomahawk." He's saving the government and the Middle East at the same time. That's a tongue-in-cheek comment about Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, who was in Iraq wanting to see the country for himself. Russian Prime Minister's Bond-esque entourage of snowmobile-riding bodyguards, quite a dramatic photograph, and of course he was supposedly the target of those protests that we saw across Russia. US hotels and airlines slash prices as Trump policies hit tourism predictably. I think that because of some of the perceived positions coming out of the current administration, the US as a destination is potentially looking less attractive as a product. One or two things is going to happen. Either the US has to go on sale in order to keep volumes up, or volumes are going to come down. When we look at our business, the leading indicators, pricing has come down. The WTTC has forecast that the travel and tourism sector, which contributed $1.5 trillion to the US economy, or 8.1% of its GDP, will grow at 2.3% in 2017. That's unlikely. I think it's going to contract. And this is interesting. This is the Expedia CEO. When you land and we tell you your luggage is coming out of baggage claim, we should offer you, do you want an Uber to your hotel? Or if you click right now, you can get a Hertz rental for 20% off because Hertz has some extra cars in its parking lot. We're talking to everybody right now, but stringing it together is pretty challenging. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar fell sharply late Friday to 106.52. It's now bounced to 106.79. Dollar index 100.4. Japanese yen 111.35. Swiss franc 10028, the pound 125.41. I'm bullish the pound as I've been for a while now. Aussie has fallen quite sharply, 0.7602 last. India rupee, that's been on a tear. Narendra Modi dividend 64.812. South Korean won 11.1766, seemingly untroubled by what's going on in the peninsula. The Brazilian real 312.20, Egyptian pound 1804.65, and the rand, which I'm saying short, right to limit 13.4254. Dollar index, this is a chart from Aurelia, and my view is that the Trump risk actually goes higher, and the dollar index therefore goes lower. Euro dollar, it was a great buy at 106.52, I think buy it. Keep an eye on it. Sterling 3-month chart, I'm looking for 140, which is a very bold call by the end of the year. Gold, let's take a look at where that is, 1248.52. That's had a good rebound on heightened geopolitical concerns. Crude oil, now this is interesting. US crude oil at $50.71. We've got this issue about OPEC coming up. We had a very strong rebound last week. Sell it. Metals enjoy longest rally in 7 years as low rates lure cash, and you can see from this chart how much it's outperformed. Venezuela government's benchmark bond due in 2027 declined 3.3 cents to 46.2 cents on the dollar on Friday. That's default territory. That's less than Mozambique. Bond issued by the cash-strapped state oil company PDVSA, which has $2.5 billion of debt maturing next month, also declined to 43.2 cents. I wrote on the 27th of March that you need to keep an eye on Caracas, Riyadh, Abuja, Luanda, and all the rest. Citibank's Falco, those of us who have traveled to Africa over the past 20 years have seen its economic pulse rise to unprecedented levels. No fears, no stress, just flying and having fun at Jazeera Beach, Mogadishu. God is merciful, nice photograph. UN Security Council agrees a lowered troop cap for Congo mission, the UN Security Council has agreed a compromise on a reduced troop cap of 16,215 for its peacekeeping mission in the DR Congo, the United Nations' largest and most expensive, after the US asked for it to be cut by a quarter. "We have an agreement," said the French UN ambassador François Delattre, told reporters on Thursday. In Zimbabwe, the Observer runs a compelling photo portraiture of President Mugabe. "South Africa faces its moment of truth," says the FT. "Mr. Zuma's next move to sack his finance minister Pravin Gordhan and stack his cabinet with yet more cronies was a gamble. It has exacerbated splits within the ruling ANC and forced a gathering crowd of opponents into recognizing the stark choice they face. They must either end this rotten presidency early by democratic means, accept a formal split within the movement that fought for nearly a century to liberate South Africa from minority rule, or surrender to nepotism, autocracy, and accelerating economic decline. There is little doubt this is a pivotal moment." South African President's dislike of Mr. Gordhan was so great that he sacked him anyway. Consequences be damned, says The Economist. New fellow, a rival MP, dubbed him the Minister of Instagram for his carefully curated photo feed showcasing his sartorial swagger. And here you see him short briefing before addressing the members of the media with the Deputy Minister and the Director General, M. Gigaba. He said about the new program it's to go ahead, but won't be implemented recklessly. There's speculation that there was a deadline requiring a signature by Friday. "I'm assuming Moody's downgrade South Africa on the 7th of April. Investors are asking, will S&P cut earlier than scheduled June? I'm expecting a 2-notch downgrade immediately." South African all shares up 2.77% this year. Dollar versus Rand. Let me put up a 3-month chart. Just sell it. I know it moved a lot last week, but it's got more to move. Egypt pound versus the dollar. Have a look at this chart. Ivory Coast plays blame game for cocoa crisis and top producer, and it's putting a lot of pressure. It's cost them at least $300 million. This video is very interesting. Sahara reporters, Nigeria President Buhari's newly appointed DG of NTDC is Folorunso Koka, here cigar chomping to I Am Davido. Good song. Point of fact, that is cigar chomping too. Nigerian all share down 5.05%. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index up 10.42% so far this year. I started my businesses small, Isabel dos Santos, on the source of her wealth at the LSE Africa Summit. And then double F, LSE Africa inviting Isabel dos Santos to come and tell the audience how she struggled for funding. What a joke on 1st April, no less. And have a look at this, migration routes across Africa from the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Kenya's inflation jumped to a 5-year high as drought bites. Consumer prices surged 10.3% in March, from 9% in February, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics said in a statement emailed from the capital, Nairobi. The rate is the highest since June 2012, when inflation registered at 10.1% after peaking at 19.7% in November 2011. The food and non-alcoholic drinks index, which accounts for about a third of the inflation basket, increased 18.6% in March from a year ago. The government has proposed to waive taxes on imports of white corn to alleviate a shortage of the staple caused by lack during the so-called short rain season over October to December. Prices may have peaked this month, will start to come down in coming months. I agree with that. Market is looking through this food drought-specific inflationary-related surge. Every other component in the basket is subdued. CBA reports 87% growth in earnings driven by fees from M-Shwari. Very strong numbers. They have leapt into the future, as it were. Uchumi set to get 1.3 billion shillings in bailout plan. This is Julius Kiptich. Kenya shilling 103.10. Nairobi all share down 2.12% this year. Kenya re-profit hit by 665 million shilling doubtful debt. NSE 20 is down 2.31% this year. RT News tweeted undercover cop kills suspected gang member execution style on busy Kenyan street. There's been a huge debate about this, and quite interesting to see what people think. And with that, I wish you a tremendous week and thank you for stopping by.